Welcome back to the show. When tackling the topic of systemic racism and the institutions it affects, law enforcement often leads to discussion. Milwaukee County Sheriff Ernell Lucas sat down with me to discuss what it means to him to be an African-American leader in law enforcement, what his department is doing to ensure accountability, and his vision for the city of Milwaukee as a mayoral candidate. A number of events across the country just in the last 2 years have caused civil rights leaders and advocates to demand an end to systemic racism, a reference to the systems in place that create and maintain racial inequality in nearly every facet of life for people of color, including law enforcement. My next guest serves as the 65th Sheriff of Milwaukee County. He says he's committed to restoring honor, integrity, and trust in the Sheriff's office by treating everyone with dignity and respect. It's a pleasure to welcome Sheriff Ernell Lucas to Our Issues. How are you, Sheriff?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here with us to discuss this very interesting topic. And I say it's interesting because many times you have to be careful in tackling the issue of systemic racism. You have to most of the time present the right framework, because in this instant, many people might think that we're saying all cops are racist. And of course, we know that that's not true. And you, of course, being a part of law enforcement, you know that's not true. But we want to specify that the goal is to talk about those instances that we've witnessed, not only here in Milwaukee, Milwaukee County, and across the country, but just all over the world, where systemic racism has played a role in affecting people of color specifically. So if you would kind of tell us personally how you go about being a leader in law enforcement and dealing with those types of situations.
Well, it's incumbent upon any leader to set an example for his or her organization. Here in the Sheriff's Office, when we came in 2019, we came in with a goal of restoring the honor, integrity, and trust in law enforcement that's been lacking as a result of those instances that you speak of, where the law enforcement did not live up to the standard that was set by our country and communities. And so as a result, it's incumbent upon that leader to put his or her fingerprint on the organization. Every day we come in here, we adhere to the high standards of this noble profession of law enforcement. We come in to do the right things, and we come in to do them the right way. And if in the course of our duties, we don't get it right, again, we have staff here who will take the time and look over our operations to the extent that if there was and is some issue as it relates to a performance of an individual, that there was going to be action and it was going to be swift, and any discipline would be very public so that the people know and are assured that the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office is adhering to the highest standards of the law enforcement profession.
Yes, and when we talk about systemic racism, though, I guess that would lead us to looking at some of the statistics that are out there. The U.S. Bureau of Justice, they reported that once stopped during traffic stops, 3 times as many Black Hispanic drivers are searched as white drivers, and they report that white drivers are also given tickets at a slightly lower rate than Black and Hispanic drivers. And so when you hear that, in your opinion, how do you go about evening the playing field for everyone and not have the statistics that suggest that one group is treated differently than another?
Well, we first have to acknowledge that there is disparities and bias in policing in our country. It's unfortunate here in 2021 that it still exists, that there's disparities in how Black and brown communities are policed versus other communities. Again, it's incumbent upon every leader to look at his or her organization and ensure that the enforcement in communities of color are consistent with those in other communities. We have to constantly look at productivity of our officers and then weigh it against, one, are we training our officers properly? And then are we supervising our people properly? to ensure that there's that fair and consistent treatment in our patrol efforts. It's a systemic problem. It's been a long problem. We cannot run from it as a profession. We must face up to it. We must start the process of restoring the honor and integrity back in our profession, Andrea, and I'm certainly one that's committed. And again, I want the people of Milwaukee County to hold me accountable for the actions of our members.
Yes, I hear that loud and clear. And obviously, you are a Black man in law enforcement. So that says quite a bit. You have a bachelor's degree, cum laude, in criminology and law studies from Marquette. You served 25 years with the Milwaukee Police Department and 17 years as the supervisor of security for the Milwaukee Brewers. So we have talked about this before. What was it that sparked you as a young Black man wanting to go into law enforcement?
Well, my beginnings start as a young boy born in the Hillside Housing Project who was raised by a single mom, and upon her passing, by a grandmother who came from the old South and taught us those values, those lessons in life, to treat everybody with dignity and respect and live by the golden rule. I always talk about this encounter that I had as a young boy with a police officer that changed the course of my life forever. When the officer accused me of stealing a woman's purse and I said I was not involved in it. And in a moment, that officer sped away. And it was in that moment that I knew what I wanted to do with my life. When we juxtapose the encounters that Black and brown men and women are having today with law enforcement and the one that I had, we got to look at what's different. The times were different. There was trust in the communities. And certainly over the course of the years, that trust has been broken. And so for me, it was that moment that was seared in my brain that I could turn that negative into a positive and then go on to a career and now hopefully have an opportunity to inspire other young people that they too can turn those negative encounters with law enforcement into positive encounters and then become the change that you want to see by joining this noble profession. And if we can do that, then again, we can start changing how policing occurs in our communities.
I'd like to give you an example of maybe a situation that has happened most recent where people would say, now, if the shoe were on the other foot, or if that whole scenario were the other way around, there would not have been the same outcome. There is a now former Milwaukee County Sheriff deputy. He ran a red light back in January of 2020. He admitted that he clearly wasn't paying attention, and a man who was loved in the community, who was a husband and a father, an attorney, and a lobbyist, he was killed. And that former deputy was put under house arrest and only required to check in to the Ozaukee County Jail. And many feel that, like I said, if the tables were turned, then it would not have been that same situation. Is that a case of preferential treatment, or is that just by chance because the judge decided it that way?
Well, as you mentioned, Andrea, I remember all too well the unfortunate loss of one Mr. Cesar Simpson. I remember that day very vividly. And I remember over the course of interacting with the families, representatives, and certainly the actions that we took, nothing that we can do will bring back Mr. Simpson. What we can commit ourselves to doing is we can let his life and his legacy live on in us by ensuring that the things that he lived for that continue to happen in our community. We saw our system of justice speak, and there are many in this community who are not satisfied with that outcome. I think too that it was very unfortunate that there was not accountability as it relates to when the former deputy was sentenced, that he was held for the period of time as it was sentenced. That's one of the things that we've got to ensure and correct in our criminal justice system, that the justice that is meted out, that it is meted out and people are held accountable for their actions, and ensure that the community gets justice that it truly deserves.
Absolutely. Milwaukee, unfortunately, has been deemed as the worst place to raise a Black child, one of the most segregated cities in America, and the state of Wisconsin has one of the highest rates of African American men behind bars. You recently announced that you are interested and you plan to run for mayor of the city of Milwaukee. And my question for you is, with all the things that I just stated, what inspires you to run for this particular office, and what would you like to see change specifically about the city of Milwaukee that has been the same for so many years?
Well, I think that Milwaukee needs a vision for the future. We must put our thumb on the scale of changing the narrative in our communities, that it's a school to prison pipeline here in Milwaukee and in the state of Wisconsin. We've got to do something about how we're going to educate our children, getting them into the trades and or into higher education, giving them hope and giving them opportunities. Well, one of the reasons that I'm committed to running to be the next mayor is that I'm committed to providing hope to some young boy or some young girl, whether they grew up in a single parent household or no parent household, that no matter what they set their hearts and minds to, if they go out there, work hard, put in the effort, don't be discouraged by the negativity that's out there, that they too can achieve what it is that you and I and many others in our community have achieved. And again, somebody's got to be the one that's cheering those young people on. I hope from that platform that I'm able to do that, help this city rise, help all neighborhoods in our city rise, not just one neighborhood, but every neighborhood from Bayview over to Harambe, from River West all the way out to Wedgwood. Every neighborhood needs to rise in the next administration in the city, and I hope I have that opportunity.
Well, we certainly thank you for taking the time out to talk to us, and we wish you all the best.
I thank you very much.
Sheriff Ernell Lucas is the 65th Sheriff of Milwaukee County. For more information on the department, you can visit county.milwaukee.gov. In our final segment, we'll visit Judge Derek Mosley to talk about implicit biases. We'll do that right after this.